So tonight we're going to do something a little different. Normally I make cards on Worktable Wednesday, but tonight I'm going to be working on a scrapbook page, and I'm testing out some different techniques, some things that I want to share with you about how to use up some of the things that you have in your stash. Hey Barb, good to see you. How to use some things up on your stash, and then also how to use some different techniques and some different supplies. I did some testing in advance, and so I got some things to show you there, and I've done a little bit of prep work, but kind of scary. So what you can see on my work table is the brown paper, and it is not Stampin' Up! Paper. It is some cardstock I had in my stash. But what I want to do is create a layout featuring these two photos, which are pictures of my son when he was at the Philmont Scout Ranch 4 years ago. And so I'm getting ready to do a one-page layout. Well, I'm going to do half of a two-page layout. I did a little lecture last week about how I'm not a fan of the one-page layouts, but I'm gonna do parts of one. So before we get started, I want to show you some things that I've done in preparation for this. So when you are working with a dark background like this kind of paper, and you want to be able to show, it's hard to put much of anything on this kind of paper and have it show up. In fact, you can even see here I have some just handwriting that I did just to delineate what the different things are that I was using. So you want to prep your paper, especially if you're using dark, and especially since I want to add some color to this, because this brown is kind of, yeah, it's kind of pathetic. It's kind of, yeah, apathetic. And so I wanted to add some more color to it. So to do that, I prepped my paper by, adding some different products to it. And let me show you the 4 products that I added. So in this corner is it is a Sharpie poster paint pen. Now I have this, I'm not really sure why I have this pen, but I do. And it is one of these that you shake up and you use in advance. Now I can show you that when you put the white on here, it is extremely opaque, and that's great if you're not going to add much of anything else. But when I came back and used the cellophane or the plastic wrap technique to add some color to the paper, you can tell that this is water-based. It's a water-based, what's it called? Water-based opaque marker, that the marker or the paint began to come off the page. So I don't really want to use that. This is a white ink pad that I have that frankly I've never been very impressed with, but I went ahead and tried it anyway. And you can tell that since it's a white ink pad, it's also water-based. As soon as I put water on it, it rubbed off. The 2 things that are remaining are both gesso products. Gesso is a product, this is by Liquitex, and it is Gesso. And you can get gesso in a couple of different ways. You can get it in white, which I have a sample of white, and you can also have clear. Now this is nothing magical, and in fact if you look at the back of the label, it shows you that it goes everywhere from a matte to a gloss, everywhere from a preparation product to a finished product. It is a fluid versus a thick, and it's transparent versus opaque. So there are quite a few different infographics on the back of the Liquitex bottle. This is a great product in that it allows you to put a coating on your paper, which you can see, you know, here it is very smooth, and then as soon as I come over here, it's got a grit to it. So this is what the clear gesso looks like, because it is in fact clear, and then this is white gesso. Both of these were applied using the edge of a gift card. I have an out-of-date gift card, and I use that to get a really thin layer on here. Oftentimes with the white, you can come back and rub it with your finger to kind of feather that out a little bit. So these were the 4 test samples I used, and then I used the Mossy Meadow ink because that will match the chaps. I was like, whatever those things are, the chaps that my son is wearing, and that's the color I want to add to this paper. And so you can see I used the Mossy Meadow ink. I basically took this cellophane and plastic packaging, dipped it down into the stamp pad, brought it up, sprayed it with water, and then applied it to these 4 different samples, and you can see the difference that it made. So this one, as I said, you can see some green on here, and you can see a little bit of that, but you also saw where it began to rub off. This, it pulled up the white. This, you can see the green on here, but I don't like the white opaque on this particular project. And then on this one, you can see the green on top of the clear gesso. So these are the 4 things I was going to show you. One other thing though, this Sharpie paint pen was excellent for splattering, for making white splatters, and that may come into play when you see the pictures that I'm going to do. So in advance of starting this video, I coated my paper with a layer of the clear gesso because I do want to come in and add some green to that. And then I brought, I have several other random pieces of paper, which, and some letter stickers that I have. This paper is from Studio Calico, and I'm going to use it for the location, for the little locator icons. This polka dot paper I want to use as a background or as one of the layers, and this is a retired Stampin' Up paper, but I like it because of the orange and the, that's pumpkin pie, and that's probably rich raspberry, but those are going to complement the colors in the photo, as well as this tranquil tide. And then you might recognize this other feather, which I like that feather paper as well. And then I have some actually close to my heart, no, Creative Memories letter stickers, so that dates me a little bit. And I found in my stash a number of pieces of chipboard that I'm going to use. So let's get started on this. And the first thing that we need to do, because we're going to come back and add more to this page, we want to get this started so that it will dry in time for us to work on the rest of it. So all this is plastic packaging, and in fact I actually took a package and cut it in half, but you want it because it's non-porous. You could use just about anything, and I saved some of my packaging. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push it down into the stamp pad like this. Now I do it that way because when I did it just like this, I did not get as much ink on there as I wanted. Now that in and of itself is pretty cool, and you can actually come in and put that down on your paper, but I like to do this, and you spray it with 1 spritz of water, and that gets it moving around a little bit, and all you do is lay it down like that. And so you see that the gesso actually provides a layer of between the paper and the ink that you're putting down, so that it doesn't dry immediately, and it gives you a chance to move it around some. So you can see I'm applying it this way, and then I'm going to try applying it a couple more times just to get a little bit more color on there. And we're going to start with this. Now I've applied gesso over the entire sheet of paper because I wasn't sure where I was going to end up with my colors and my ink. But I like having this here like this. Now, we will take this and put it aside. I'm going to continue to spray this with a little bit of water to give it some motion. And when I say motion, so you'll see that like a watercolor, it puddles up a little bit. So what I can do is I can simply tilt the page like that so it runs, and I can get some interesting details over to the sides. Or I can take my paintbrush with a little bit of water on it and just move it around some. And so that gives you a chance to, like I say, to move the color around a little bit. And then, and when you spray it like this, it gives it more of an organic edge. If you just use the paintbrush, sometimes it'll give it a sort of a rough edge, but this gives you a way to kind of move the water around. And then do that. I'm going to rinse my brush out. I've gone high tech. I'm using binder clips on the side of a Arkansas Traveler's Cup. So there's still some water on here. So I'm going to take a paper towel, fold it up, and just come in here and mop up, not mop up, but get some of this water off here. Now I use the tip of it because if you use the side like I just did, you end up with a big line on there. So all I'm going to do, now, under normal circumstances, I'd let this dry overnight and come back and work on it tomorrow, but I think I'm going to try to get up as much of this ink as I can while we're talking and working. Let's see, that's just making a mess now. Now, Barb, this is not how I normally scrapbook. I'm much more of a layer the papers together, do it nice and neat. This is a little bit messier than my normal style, but it was something that I wanted to try. So while we're going to let this dry, I'm going to set this aside so it dries. And this gesso does give the paper a really interesting hand and feel. So it feels, I mean, you can see it, it feels different. It almost feels like leather. So we're going to set this aside. Let that dry some. Something you can do sometimes is use a paper towel with a texture on it, and it leaves an interesting imprint on your paper if you have used inks. So here are the two photos that I'm going to work with tonight, and I want to go ahead and get these matted. And so I've started with this lighter brown, and let's see, I'm going to go this direction with this. Let's see. Now, and if you know me very well, you know this also. I normally am all about cutting the paper on the paper trimmer and making sure everything's even and straight and squared and plumb. But when I'm trying this and trying to be a little bit less, I don't know, worked up about things. So let me trim this down a little bit. All right, so there's that piece. And then I'll come back and do this piece as well. Let's see. You know, if you've scrapbooked for any length of time, and Barb, it doesn't take long for you to scrapbook for any length of time and acquire a certain amount of paper, you end up with quite a variety of papers in your stash. And so this is a fun thing to do. And I frankly started scrapbooking before I started card making, because that's really much more my passion. You can see this is actually Halloween paper on the back. So we're going to start with these two. And actually I'm going to flip these, because this is the picture that I like the best, because it's got the look that I often get from Wonder Boy. And then we have this one where he's working with the horse. So we'll start with these two, and most likely I'm going to put them on here like this. Now, this was at Philmont Scout Ranch, and Ben loved this horse. This horse's name was Baggins, and from what I recall him telling me, Baggins was an older horse, which I think we would understand is probably true, and evidently was but you have tubs of pictures, but still well, you know, I can't say that I don't have tubs of pictures. I still have some tubs of pictures. Let's not get too personal here. The Baggins actually had, again, this is some more Halloween paper, so you see a theme here. Baggins was blind in one eye and had actually, I believe, successfully battled cancer, but he loved that horse. It was funny. So this is the horse. When they go to Philmont, they spend a few days in base camp learning how to work with the horses and take care of the horses. And in fact, this is in the base camp at the stables. You can see the stables in the background. He's learning how to comb the horse and take care of the horse, because later on his adventure, they ride the horses and then they have pack mules that carry all of their belongings, and they go a 55 or 60 mile camping trip throughout the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And so it is a wonderful experience. And if you have a son or a daughter who is interested in that, I cannot recommend this highly enough in terms of maturing and life experiences and all of those other things. It's a great experience for these kids. Okay, so this has done a good amount of drying. Let me pop it real quickly with my heat gun. Let's see if I can get that off the hook. And let's just give it real quick dry. Get one more hit just to finish things off. Sorry for it being so loud. I know that this is one of the dangers and drawbacks of using a heat gun on camera, but I do want to get this dried out so that I can attach. And so what you can see here is that this is not a real vibrant green, but it's enough to give you some texture to the page. And frankly, I think that with it having a little bit of a sheen to it, it almost looks like a leather to me, which that may just be wishful thinking on my part. And so, you know, it does buckle because there is moisture in the paper, and generally paper doesn't like moisture. But what we're going to do is, after I finish this, it'll go into a book and it'll lay flat and it'll eventually flatten back out. So this feels pretty good. I think let's see. No, I'm going to leave it this direction. Okay. Alrighty. So we know that this piece is 12 by 12, and so we're going to go ahead and attach that across the center. Now, Barb, thanks for, you like the tornadoes. You know what? I want to tell you that I like to say I'm being artistic, but really I'm just being lazy, because it gives you a lot of texture and it gives you a splash of color without a lot of work. And so thank you all the same. I used to go scrapbooking with a group of ladies, and there was one lady who made beautiful scrapbooks, but could not, for the life of herself, I mean, she could not tear an edge. And in fact, when she would see us tearing edges of paper, it used to just send her into, she just really did not like it at all. It was kind of funny. We would sometimes do it and then call her attention to it just so that she would see it. And then let's see, I've already said I want this picture on top. You know what? I think I'm actually going to change this, because you don't see the Halloween. So this gives me a little bit more difference here. So I'll put this one here and this one like this. And then I'm going to add a few other items. So in my stash, because I have been scrapbooking forever, I can understand, and you know, my 14-year-old rescue fig dog is losing her sight in one eye. But let me read this comment. Still love her. She wants to see me all the time. Well, yes, I'm surprised I haven't had a visit from my wild ass beagle, because it's when he hears my voice, he sometimes has to come up and visit while I'm working on stuff. So like I said, I have a plethora of items, but one of the neat things about doing something like this is that it's very easy to use up random bits and pieces in your stash, whether it's on cards or on scrapbook pages. So I'm using some rub-ons and getting those on just to add. But look what I'm seeing, and I didn't realize this was going to do this, is I've scraped it too hard. And it wants to scrape off my color on my paper. So again, I'm just doing this to get some texture on there. I'm not real concerned about exactly how it looks. You've grown up, you understand about the wild ass beagle concept. He loves coming to see me and just comes tearing up the stairs. You know, for the first 10 years we had him, he really was an outside dog, but it was so cold this winter, and he's 10 or 11 years old, and so we let him spend quite a bit of time inside. Now, throw in the fact that I've been working from home, my husband retired. Well, I just did that backwards. That means that this rub-on is probably dead because it peeled off the wrong way. But let's see if we can't make it happen. Let's see here. Well, this is quite interesting. Look at that. So, Barb, what I was going to say is that since I worked from home all winter, I mean for the last year, and then I retired, my husband's retired, there's somebody home all the time. So now he thinks he's an inside dog. And so he really gets his feelings hurt when we send him outside, when we're cooking dinner, or when we just, you know, when it's good weather and he needs to be outside. I mean, my gosh, he's a dog. He seems to forget that sometimes. Okay, so I've got a little bit of this stitching. I've got 2 pieces here and 1 here, so that gives you the 3. And now I'm going to start laying in a number of other items. And so I've got some chipboard. I've been through cleaning out a lot of the stuff that I have in my stash. And so that's where a lot of these things have come from. So I like this. The first half of my life I went to school. The second half of my life I got an education. And that's classic Mark Twain. And so then we're going to come over here and put this one over here underneath that. And then I think I'm going to put the stamp. So that... now I know that this isn't a very frou-frou page, but this is my baby. And so I think I may have to put the heart up there anyway, because I love it. And then I've got my title, which I'm going to use Cowboy Up. And like I said, I'm going to use the letters same as with mine all the time. I know they are just, I mean, he's just become sort of a nuisance at times. So I have, like I said, I have some leftover or old Creative Memories letters. So let me grab my T-square, and we'll start with this since everything else is going to work around this. And I'm just going to start layering in my letters. C-O-W-B-O. I have to spell it backwards, and that's a bit of a challenge at times. I've been known to write my titles out longhand so that I can spell them correctly when I'm putting them on backwards. Now, the reason I'm putting this on backwards is that I've sort of set a margin on the right side of my paper of where I want it to stop, and then I just start there and use my T-square to make sure everything's lined up across the page, and then I just spell it backwards over here, and then I know exactly where I can put my photos before I stick those down. One of the things that drives me crazy when I'm scrapbooking is getting literally the cart before the horse, and I set my pictures down and I attach them to the page, and then I realize I don't have room for a title or for a description or any sort of journaling. So there's the Cowboy, and then I'm going to come back with Up, and I have a different font, and this is, I am not sure what this brand this is, but again, I spent some time this winter cleaning out my stash, and I found all sorts of little goodies. And so we're just going to put this right up under here. So there's the U, and I know I have a P somewhere. I've seen it twice. I know I saw it. I know. Well, you know what? It's a D, but we're going to turn it upside down and make it a P, because that's the color scheme I want. And so that's the thing about some of these fonts. You can always, some of the fonts, you can turn them upside down and make them work the way you want. So we have Cowboy Up, and there's that. Now I've got this one other piece of cardstock that we could do something with, but I'm afraid that it's actually almost too stark white. So if I do anything, I may cut out some of these feathers, sort of just fussy cut those real quickly. Let's see here. But this is a white background on this paper. Take the R and cut it up. Oh, I do that too. You can make a lot of things with an R. It's amazing what you can make out of an R. So this is just called fussy cutting, and all I'm doing is cutting out around these feathers. And I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to use them, but I've got some ideas. And so I'm also trying to show that not only do you not have to spend a lot of money to scrapbook, because this is all stuff I had in my stash, which obviously, oh, thank you, which, you know, obviously I had to acquire the stash at some point, and so throughout the years I have, but you know, I just also want to show that it doesn't take a whole lot of time, that you can actually put together a scrapbook page pretty quickly. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm cutting on, I think I got off screen for a second because I was fussy cutting towards closer to my eyes so I could see what I was doing. You know, I'm funny like that. I want to be able to see what I'm doing. But again, I'm going to cut three feathers. That's that old rule of 3, and it's not necessarily just 3. It is evidently a rule of uneven objects. My grandmother used to do competitive flower arranging, which, you know, you imagine that. She was in the garden club, and they did all the flower arranging, and she even had me do an arrangement one time, and it was, I felt incredibly silly doing it, but I'm sure she was thrilled that I did it. But I don't think I won anything for it, but it was very almost an, I don't want to say Art Deco, but it was a dandelion, and I mean, it was a daffodil. You know, I think daffodils look beautiful in big bunches, but this was like a single daffodil, so it was really odd. Okay, so those are our pieces there, and then I have this label that is actually left over, and it's got January on the back side, but I'm not going to use it for January, but that's how I'm going to label it. And so let me start attaching the photos to the paper. Now, one other thing I'll say about using, when you use gesso on paper, it does affect its ability to stick. So when you start adhering items to gesso, especially like these cardstock items, chipboard items, you know, generally they aren't the most sticky to begin with. And then you throw on the fact that you're putting on top of gesso. And so sometimes that'll give you problems. So let's see where this is going to fit. I don't want to, let me see. Maybe I'll put that there. And I'll put this here. I want to move everything up some because I feel like it's kind of gotten tilted down to the bottom of the page. Yeah, let's do this. Let's move it up some here. And that does, okay, some more of that is showing. So let's start with this picture. Now, when you're gluing back down to paper with gesso on it, a lot of times you are better off using a liquid glue. And this is just a white glue similar to our Tombow. I like this. This has got a thin applicator, so you can get up underneath things. But this is like our Tombow multi-adhesive. And so we're going to put this up like this. And frankly, this is generally what you have to use with the gesso base. So let me get my... All right, I have a brand new, oh, there they are, brand new package of dimensionals, which I think I used last week. Oh, and by the way, the cards that I made last week are going to be featured in my blog post that's coming out later this week in my the Southern Goodbye. That's the name of the blog post, talking about how to say goodbye to some of our favorite stamp sets, which the ones that I used last week, I really enjoyed those. So we'll get that started. Now, this, like I said, this chipboard has adhesive on it, but I'm going to go ahead and put some more adhesive on it. Let's see. What time is 9:04? Okay. Try to start getting start winding this up. Okay. I think I'm going to do this. All right. And then this piece of chipboard over here. Well, sometimes these things are wicked. They don't want to get off. The backing doesn't want to come off. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there that do this mixed media, which is what this is called. This is considered a mixed media background with the paint and everything else, or with the inks. There are a lot of people that do that, and they do it much more, what do I want to say, elegantly than but I'm trying. I'm getting started on it, so we're going to try. Mainly because I seem to have, like I said, a plethora of stuff, and I want to start using it and getting it out of my stash. Okay. Now I'll take these little feathers from right here that I cut out, and you can see that I'm just going to add those in there, just to give a little bit of texture. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to label this with the horse's name. Like I said, Benjamin loved this horse. His horse's name was Baggins, like Bilbo Baggins. And so I'm going to put a scotch of glue here because I could tell this is drying out as well. And like I said, this is a wonderful little fine tip bottle, and it's just the plain old, like I said, Tombow glue, which I really like for this kind of stuff. Okay, so we have Baggins there. Now I'm going to come back and put these quotation marks around the title. I barely left enough room to do the R. I'll do that. Okay. And then let's take some of this twine. Oopsie, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's take some of this. I'm going to straighten it out some with my hand. And then, here are my scissors. Sitting in the ink. We're just going to loop this up. And just I'm going to make a little kind of make a messy little wad, and we're just going to stick a little. I tell you what, I think I'm going to put that under the heart, so I'm going to put some more glue there. Put that like that, and then we're just going to stick this back down on top of that to give it a little bit of texture over there. And I'm going to try to make this a little sort of a little collection over here of different pieces. That is really not wanting to stick. I think I might have to come back and talk to it a little firmly. So, and I think this old-fashioned stamp I'm going to put up here next to Bilbo. And let's see here. All right, but I just wanted to do something different tonight, something that was not necessarily card making, but it's something that you can use your card making supplies to do scrapbook pages. You know, Stampin' Up! Does sell 12 by 12 papers. We have 6 by 8 albums, but I just wanted to show this as an example of things that you could do with sort of a collection of misfits. None of these things really went together, but I wanted to see if we couldn't make it all come together anyway. So what I'm going to do is draw some lines over here on this corner, and I will yes, Barb, it's a lot like making a large card, but you got a lot more. Yeah, you have a lot of room to work on. Like I said, I think I'm going to move this over, and I'll add my journaling on the bottom right hand corner and after we finish, because that's the other thing, is that on top of this gesso, pens generally aren't real cooperative either. But one good thing about old supplies, when you use up old supplies, is oftentimes the adhesive is starting to wear out, and so it gives you a little bit of a grace period to get your things adhered correctly. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of, yeah, there's adhesive on that, but not much. Now back to what I said earlier in the conversation was about this Sharpie pen. It's really good for doing white splotches. So what I think I'm going to do is, since we've got some spattering on the horse, I'm getting it on my hand and not, well, I think I'm not having much luck. I think I'm going to take this and turn it over. And now that I've got some on there, I can, oh crap. There we go. So that just gives us a little bit more, again, some texture and some dimension on the page that we wouldn't normally have. And just gives you something a little bit different to look at. So thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Barb, for your comments. And if you feel so inclined, please don't hesitate to share this and see if anybody else might be interested in doing this. I think once we start getting back into in-person classes, I'm going to start trying to do some more scrapbooking classes. I don't know that I'll necessarily teach this kind of thing because I don't know that I'm that good at it, but I'll be more than glad to help people. And frankly, Barb, if you've got a bucket of photos, I'll be more than glad to help you work through your organization, because that is a major, major undertaking, and it's one that I have in fact undertaken with both mine and some other photos from my family members. So anyway, that's all we have for tonight. Thanks for joining me, and have a great week, and we'll be back next week. All right, bye-bye.